Greetings everyone. My name is Vidhi Sharma and I'm a graduate student in Data Science and Business Analytics. I would like to welcome you all to the 6th Annual Charlotte Women in Data Science Virtual Conference hosted and sponsored by UNC Charlotte School of Data Science and Laws. The With Charlotte Conference initiative aims to inspire and educate data scientists across the region regardless of gender and to support women in the field. With the current state of the world mainly interacting online, we are grateful for your decision to attend our two-day virtual event and show your support for our various speakers. I would like to extend a special thanks to all of our attendees for showing up and showing your support. We do have a Q&A session in the end, so please drop in your questions in the chat box. Now, I'm happy to introduce our speaker for the hour, Arpita Ghoshal, Senior Analytics Manager at Kearney, along with Aishwarya Kaul, Associate at Kearney.
Hi everyone. Hi, this is Arpita. So as Vidhi mentioned, I'm a Senior Analytics Manager. I work for Kearney. Kearney is a management consulting organization, and I have about 15 years experience in analytics and data science. Before Kearney, I used to work for Citibank in risk and marketing analytics. So I'm in that sense, I'm a banker, data science turned consultant. And here in Kearney, I work for clients across the globe, multiple industries. And if not for COVID, usually on client sites, working with them. And in terms of what I do, I lead analytics and data science transformation programs where I advise organizations on the analytics way forward. And I've also led multiple data science engagements. And as I mentioned, I think have been fortunate to work across the globe and across industries. And in that sense, have interacted with many data science teams, including many women colleagues in different situations and different contexts. From large organizations, right, which have large analytics teams, but maybe are not doing that great in terms of gender diversity, to smaller organizations who are maybe doing a great job in terms of pushing the gender issue, to even working for organizations like, for example, I stayed in a mining camp for 10 weeks doing a data science project, and as you can imagine, that is any which ways quite a male-dominated industry, so you wouldn't really find a lot of women data scientists there. So I've kind of seen, interacted with issues that can emerge with gender diversity in data science, and feel very happy and honored to be part of this conversation. Over to you, Aishwarya.
Thanks, Arpita. Hi, everyone. This is Aishwarya Kaul, and I'm an associate at Kearney, India. About my experience, I have around 4 years of experience in analytics and management consulting. Particularly in analytics, I've worked on multiple projects in the procurement and supply chain divisions across the globe, and across industries as well, right? CPG, manufacturing, healthcare, pharma. And I've seen that across the globe, in these departments, particularly if you see in procurement and in supply chain, these are very male-dominated divisions, and you see a very skewed gender ratio there as well. And even in terms of maturity in analytics and data science, these are extremely low in terms of maturity and don't really use analytics and data science that much. So in today's topic, I bring that experience and will share my insights of why and how it's really important to have a good ratio of women in the data science department.
Okay, to start off with, I mean, we're all here. We're all, in that sense, we all know how powerful of a force data science is becoming. We understand its transformative potential, fact that it's not just about execution. It facilitates new ways of thinking, builds new business capabilities. And what does that mean? It means that we need specialized capabilities and skill sets. And organizations today are looking to expand their data science teams, right? So we are looking for smart, capable people, irrespective of their gender. But as we all know, right, currently demand far outweighs the availability of supply. And then moving on to the next slide. think so. Not just about demand supply gap, right? But we are also in an era of, what I call smarter, faster analytics, right? In fact, if you see organizations like Amazon, Google, Facebooks of the world, digital native organizations, right? So data and analytics is core to every process and every operation. So in that sense, it's that age of automated machines, self-learning, feedback loops. But it's also important to understand that it's a human intelligence, right? At the end, it is human guided. And at the end of the day, right, machines reflect the inherent assumptions and biases of the developers. So many of you, or maybe, maybe it might be news to some of you, right? UNESCO actually published 2009, there was a publication that came out. It was called I'd Blush If I Could. It was about Siri, right? What used to happen is that, a lot of people would say not very complimentary things to Siri. And then Siri would reply, I'd blush if I could, right? And it kind of reflected that if you think about it, digital assistants are often, they're projected as young women, right? So it's kind of a very powerful illustration of gender biases that are coded in, technology, data science, new age products. And of course, since then Siri has been reprogrammed. So now if you say something not very complimentary to her, she's going to give like a more general neutral response. But the fact remains that, that bias is there. And at the end of the day, what it means is that, okay, if AI and data science tools reflect the biases of who build them, then the only way to bridge that gap is to involve more women and to involve more diverse women, right? And to have more diverse points of view. Yet, I think, and Ishwarya, if we go to the next slide, actually the reality is very, very different, right? I think the general consensus is that if you look at studies or surveys, we find that on an average, there are only around 15 to 20% women in data science teams. And what we are talking about is actually, we are talking about half of the world's population. So it's this structural constraint that is hindering organizations in talent, right? In terms of talent gap, and they are not able to take their data science programs to the next level. And as I was talking about, it's not just about talent gap, it is also about these algorithmic biases, right? Just the other day, I think Ashwarya and I were chatting with one of our partners, and he was telling a story about visiting this medical devices organization, and they are doing great things in terms of like robotics. And one of the devices that they have invented, it kind of simulates Parkinson's disease, right? So it provides doctors that information that they need to make proactive treatments, for example. But what he was talking about is what has happened is because the developers, and they're all great innovators, but it's not a very gender diverse team, and also in terms of the subjects on which it has been tested. So this device is not working as well as you would expect on female patients. So what we are talking about is that some of these biases and these talent gaps don't just impact enterprises, but they can also impact our community and our society. And though, if you think about it, at the end of the day, all the skills that data scientists require, actually they don't have anything to do with technical ability in that sense, because you can learn technical ability, you can learn coding, right? So it's potentially more about critical thinking, problem solving, big picture, how creative are you, how well can you communicate your point of view, etc. All of which tend to be gender neutral, right? There's nothing there that either a male data scientist can do better than a female data scientist. And yet today, if you kind of look around, and you do have female role models, right? Like you have some female data scientists who've kind of reached maybe they're heading large organizations, etc. But you can count them on your fingers. So the unfortunate, shocking reality today is, if you think about it, there is a gender issue. Data science, on an average, a lot of data science programs don't have enough women. And shockingly enough, if you start looking around, you might not even find a lot of female data scientist role models to look up to. With that, I will hand it over to Aishwarya, who will kind of deep dive into some of these issues a little more.
Yeah, thanks, Arpita. So as Arpita already mentioned, we have this really huge issue of a very skewed gender ratio in the data science industry. And Arpita and I have both been in the field for quite long, and having worked side by side with so many organizations, we've identified basically three root causes of why the skew actually exists in data science. So the first is a deep-rooted gender bias that exists in the society at large, both among men and women. The second reason that we see is a lack of authentic image around data science itself. So it's really unclear, especially to students, as to what a data science career may relate to. And basically, because of that unclarity, they tend to not join this industry, and particularly women are really deterred because of that reason. And the third reason that we've identified is archaic recruitment filters, HR policies, and a general work culture that exists in organizations, which acts as a roadblock to women who may really be interested in entering this data science industry. I'll just continue deep diving into the issue number one that we talked about, the deep-rooted gender bias. And I think it's really good to start off with a very personal experience and one of the discussions that we had with one of the partners at Carney. So you see on the screen itself, Catherine Black. She's a partner at Carney in the consumer goods space. And, over multiple years, she's worked across the globe with CXOs, across multiple issues, and also has previously worked in analytics organizations as well. So, we stumbled across one of the stories which really hit us hard, because I think it's very common, and I'm sure many of the women in the audience would also relate to this, is that, in one of the interviews, in one of the panels that she was leading, a woman candidate, a very capable woman candidate, was actually rejected by the panel because she seemed too chirpy and not too serious, and seemed like she couldn't handle a team, although she had more than 15 years of relevant work experience and had handled very large teams. So I think this is just one of the examples where the gender bias really plays hard, and especially for a woman, the behavior and demeanor trumpeted her cognitive ability. And I think Arpita and I, even during our regular work, we've seen quite a few times that, our clients even may not look us directly in the eye, may not make eye contact. And that may not be due to a very obvious reasons, but it's just a bias that everyone has within them, whether men or women. And we've also seen that even if, there's a project leader who's a woman, the client may not directly address her, even though she's the leader, and he may just end up addressing her, people who actually work for her who are men probably. So that's just a very clear example of how gender bias affects us. But the question is, why does that exist? And based on our understanding and research, we've tried to pinpoint this to the early human evolution age, when women were expected to be caregivers and men were more, as seemed to be more of protectors and providers. And although this sort of division of work was quite good, I assume, at that time, but I think now it's not very relevant. And this age-old tradition, so to say, actually carries a modern-day price. And it's, based on research, it is seen that women in school, if they're in middle school, up to 74% of middle school girls actually express interest in STEM-related topics. But only 0.4% of high school girls actually end up pursuing STEM degrees. And this really, goes on to show that this is a very important age when most women are deterred from pursuing their interests, and the gender bias really takes a toll during this age, based on our research. And even if you look at women who are in STEM related topics at the university level, which I'm sure a lot of you are in the audience as well, you would see that there's a very masculine environment that goes on in these universities or educational arenas, which really hinders women from pursuing careers in the data science industry or even the STEM industry as a whole, because naturally they expect that such a masculine environment would translate to their workplace. And this really does hinder a lot of women from entering this workspace. We also researched some of the IIT test results. So IIT tests are basically behavioral tests that even you can take. It's free. Actually, I've taken it myself, and it turns out that even I have biases, although I am a woman. So that was quite interesting. And based on IT test results, 5 out of 6 metrics related to brilliance are actually attributed to men more than to women. So that is definitely shocking, and it's quite obvious as to why this would deter women from entering the data science industry. Now that we've understood the cause, this is one of the very big causes. The question is, how do we solve this problem? Because it's really important to solve this big issue. And the steps are actually quite simple. And the first one I would say is that, like any other problem, you must accept that the problem exists. Only then can you come up with solutions. So the first solution would be to accept these biases. And instead of denying them, you need to accept that both men and women are affected by these biases. And the next step can be, especially for educational institutes and parents, to understand that they need to not force their views on their young ones, especially the girls. And young women really need to be exposed to all sorts of interest areas and explore all sorts of interest areas, instead of parents or universities or in the school forcing interest onto them. And then lastly, I feel that organizations can really benefit by making their employees aware of the biases that exist, such as by conducting IIT tests on their employees. And in this way, we feel that the employees will become aware of their biases and how these biases affect them at their home and also during the workplace, during their everyday work, and even during recruitment.
So I'll, talk about the second issue that Aishwarya was talking about, which is lack of an authentic image. So this is, data science seeming like a black box. Maybe again, many of you might relate to this, right? So especially, I think students or young professionals who've just kind of entered the industry, and it's not something that only impacts women. It also impacts men. Data science as a profession, it kind of seems like there's going to be this guy who's going to be coding, he's going to be typing away like a zillion times on his there's going to be this solitary existence, and he's going to be developing like codes and algos, etc., etc., which is all true, right? It's a part of data science, but then what it kind of misses is that at the end of the day, it is not really about the algorithms, it's not about the code, but it is about the problem that you're solving, right? So what happens is sometimes before entering the industry, people leave because they don't get a chance to actually experience what the purpose of data science is, which is not really about the technical abilities, but it is about, I think, making a difference, right? Using data, using creativity, using algorithms, using coding, all of that has a higher purpose in that sense, right? And also, I mean, if you look at it, how are people usually exposed to like data science before they enter the industry? The example that will come up is hackathons, and I think hackathons are great, right? Because even before you're kind of working for an organization, you get exposed to maybe a kind of problem that you'll be solving, but usually again then the focus is not really on the problem, right? The focus is more on solving the problem using, let's say, a set of technologies, solving it during like I need to kind of solve this within 2 days or 3 days, which is very different from what actually happens in the real world, right? So organizations that we've worked with, and we were talking about the fact where data science or analytics has become a success, it is usually data scientists who have got well integrated into the very fabric of the organization, right? So they work seamlessly, and you cannot really distinguish between somebody who's a data scientist and somebody who's solving problems for the business. So now that we've kind of talked about the issue, what is it that organizations can do about this, right? And it'll look a little weird, right? Because all of these things, these are very, very foundational. But what we found through research is that we just don't do enough of these things, right? If we do these things more, so for example, all organizations, right, usually have women cells, but what we found is that they don't engage enough with women students, and they don't really educate women students on what data science is, what are the different potential that data science offers. So For example, it's not just about one path, right? You could, for example, become a translator who's not only coding, but is translating business requirements into technical requirements. You could, for example, maybe concentrate a little more on machine learning than on other disciplines um, uh, of data science. Or you could even say that I'm going to be a data scientist for a while, and then maybe I'm going to switch track and get into some other profession. But what we find is that a lot of people either don't enter or enter and leave because they're just not educated or engaged enough. Right? The other two solutions, again, they look very simple, but the similar problem exists, that as organizations, as corporates, I don't think we do this enough. So the course approach, right? How do people learn about data science? Either you would join an educational institution, and you would do it formally as a part of your course, or if you're that interested and maybe you really want to enter this profession, you're going to go and do online courses. But then what that kind of misses is, again, the practical. And what the practical is at the end of the day, it's about a business situation, right? So you're again trying to solve a business problem using data and using technical tools. So the data and technical tools are important, but they are not what are going to make you, for example, a successful data scientist, or only make you a successful data scientist. And I think the third one is again related to the fact that if we engage with women students more, we offer them a more practical focus during the course, and also if organizations are able to expand internship opportunities. So let, I think, young women kind of come and experience what data science is all about, right? Like we call it, and you'll see so many YouTube videos about day in the life of a data scientist. But what does it really mean, right? So you come and you work as a data scientist and experience the real world. So I think these are three of very simple, very foundational solutions, but I think they really work if we do them more. I'll switch the baton back to Aishwarya to talk about the third issue.
Yeah. So the third and final issue that we identified was actually archaic recruitment filters and methodologies, including HR policies and the actual culture that exists in the workplace. And similar to how we start off every issue with a story, because that gives a personal touch and authenticity as well. So if we look at the screen, you see one of our partners, women partners at Kearney, Ramyani Basu, and she's a partner in the digital transformation practice at Kearney. And I mean, even as Kearney, we'd be lying that, we have it all sorted. Even within our organization, there is definitely a lack of women candidates that we have in the whole organization as such, and even within the data science team. But just talking about Ramyani's experience as such, so the digital transformation is also an offering that is really sought after by clients nowadays, because they want to get ahead of the digital game, because it really is a benefit for the business as such. And because of this, Ramyani has been fortunate to work with a lot of clients in a lot of problem areas. And in her point of view, it's really, we need to make a lot more effort to find the right women candidates. They're definitely out there. We just need to work harder to recruit them. And another story that we, stumbled upon while talking to her was about one of her female colleagues who was actually a senior partner in another consulting firm. And it was another story that I think would ring a bell with quite a few women across the globe, working women rather, is that, this particular senior partner, when she returned to her office after a year of maternity leave, it was as if, in her office, in her organization, everyone had just forgotten her. Nobody remembered her capability. She really had to start from scratch all over again. So, this is another problem that women especially face because of a lack of good culture that exists in the organization, the perspectives that both men and women have in the organization related to women topics, for instance. And taking off from there, talking particularly about the recruitment filters, if you think about it, especially in data science departments for organizations, it's almost natural for companies to accept those candidates who already have, for instance, the technical skills required to do the job. For example, they would know SQL, they would know Python, they would know how to handle data. And it's quite understandable as to why they would prefer such candidates, because they can, directly get onto the job. But unfortunately, this very narrow approach to recruitment actually filters off very good candidates who would have otherwise been really successful data scientists. And this particularly affects women because the number of women in STEM and those who are interested in data science are already very few. So having this additional filter just reduces the number of women candidates even further. Now, how can we solve this? And again, the solution is quite simple. We just need to do away with the technical filter that we have and instead focus on the qualities that Arpita already talked about, that make any data scientist a successful one, which would be, cognitive ability, big picture thinking, intuition, and all of these are actually technology and gender agnostic. So if we do away with the technical filter and focus on the generic important traits, and as long as the candidate has the motivation and the ability to learn these tools on the job, we feel that these tools and technical skills should definitely not be a deal breaker while recruiting candidates. So in essence, to conclude, we feel that it's quite a perfect match between data science and women. Data science is a very growing field, booming field, has lots of jobs, and it actually needs women's perspectives to scale to the next level. And with this leverage, women can actually make their mark in this field. And I mean, honestly, data science is one of those jobs, and it's a role that offers quite a lot of flexibility, which very few other roles in industries offer. So it's really good for women in different stages of their career and of lives, where they want to focus time between work and home as well. So it's got a perfect match, in our opinion. And I'd just like Arpita to give some concluding remarks as well.
Yeah, thank you, Aishwarya. So I think, like Aishwarya mentioned, it's a perfect match. And in that sense, like we were talking about, right? Not just a perfect match, but you need that diversity, you need that point of view, so that we can make tools, technologies, products. We can go on the journey in a more fair manner, right? So this is not just critical. I think it is now imperative, because as we were talking about, it is the age where we will see there's a lot of automation that's going to drive everything, right? So when automation and human guided learning drives a lot of innovation, that innovation needs to incorporate all points of view. So in that sense, I think we've raised we've what we feel is that we've started the conversation, and like Aishwarya mentioned, I don't think we or anybody else has this sorted out, but what we would like to do is start this conversation and keep talking about it, because once we start talking about it, then we are kind of focusing our hearts and our minds on it. So yeah, I mean, that's, I think, a conversation from our side, and we would be very happy to take any questions or hear anybody's point of view on this.
Thank you so much, Arpita and Aishwarya, for giving your your insights on how women can actually encourage themselves and just be in this world of data science. So I would like that if anyone has questions, they can just put in the chat box. So I am having actually a question for you guys. So how is your organization, like as you mentioned that you are expanding your internship opportunities and encouraging women to diversify their skill set. So is there any specific thing which you have noticed that women in the current time is lacking, which they can improve upon?
So maybe I'll kind of give my point of view, and then I'll also invite Aishwarya, to kind of talk about, from her experience. I think specifically what we found is that it is the confidence that makes a difference, right? So when young men and young women, right, who are just kind of getting into this field, it is irrespective of the kind of course that you've done, you will come in with a very theoretical perspective, right? The practical is what you learn on the job. Sometimes what we feel is that because women tend to tend to kind of feel that they're not, unless they're perfect, they shouldn't be there, which is not how a lot of men approach problems, right? So a lot of men will say that even if I'm 30%, perfect, I'm going to say I can do it. So maybe it is that confidence that makes a difference, right? Especially in the early stages of the career, because data science really is about learning. I mean, you can come in with a lot of theoretical knowledge of tools and technologies, but the business context, and that domain understanding, etc., that requires confidence, because that requires confidence to actually ask the right questions, not to be afraid to almost seem as if you don't know anything. And that is, I think, one quality which sometimes makes a difference about why women, I think, come in and then sometimes don't continue in this field.
Yeah, agreed. And I think what Kani is doing is, for example, you see Arpita and I today in this conference. That's one of the things that Kani did, sending us here and helping us make a mark and recognize ourselves. So I think Kani, of course, we're not at the penultimate stage yet, but honestly, as an employee, I feel that Kani does quite a few things. So it keeps an eye out for women candidates. We have a very special program for all women consultants, so that we feel at home, so to say, in the organization. And in case we have any issues, we can reach out directly to senior leadership as well. And this year, we're also hosting the annual Women in Data Science, and actually also a Women in for the Women's Day, we have a conference. So I'm sorry, it's not Women in Data Science, but it's a women conference that we hold every year, and we continue to do that tradition. So I feel that in that sense, Karni is doing at least some bit of what it should be doing.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we have a question by Jessie. She's asking that as an undergraduate woman, what is the best way to advocate for myself as a woman aspiring to become a data scientist?
So maybe Aishwarya, you take this question first, and then I can add.
Sure. Yeah. So I think the best way to advocate would be, as Arpita already mentioned, women have a problem with confidence. I feel that, as Arpita already mentioned, even if men are not perfect in what they do, they are just very confident of their ability as such. And it's actually popular research as well. So even in the technical field or IT field, it's seen, and it's an HBR research actually, that men who have 1 year of coding experience have equal amount of confidence to women who have 8 years of coding experience. So I think the first thing is just building that confidence in yourself and believing that you can do it. There's nothing that you can't, as long as you have the ability and the right mindset, you can definitely do it. And I think as an undergraduate student, you can connect with people and organizations, try to get internship opportunities for yourself, so that you can again build that confidence and experience to actually finally become a data scientist. Arpita?
Yeah, I mean, I agree, I think, with everything Aishwarya has said. And yeah, I mean, it is just, I think, reaching out, right? So if you're an undergraduate woman and you aspire to become a data scientist, I'm assuming that you might already be building up your technical skill set, right? So online you might be going and, let's say, learning a language or looking at YouTube videos, but maybe what you might not be doing enough is just reaching out to like your contacts and just putting yourself out there, right? In fact, as examples, right, in our recruitments, right, we've interviewed women who've contacted us through LinkedIn and send us their resumes, and that is also, like senior partners have kind of sent us resumes at times to tell us that this candidate, she's great, she's been approaching me and she's written me a couple of cover letters which are really inspiring. Why don't you guys go ahead and have a conversation with her? Sometimes it is as simple as just contacting people and getting a response and then putting yourself out there.
Thank you so much. Okay, so do we have any more questions? So adding on to my question, I'm having one more. So like there are certain women out there who are not into technical domain, as in like they aren't doing any such technicals, they are not into technical undergraduation kind of a stream. So in that case, it becomes at times difficult for them to stand out, because there are people who are having a technical education instead of those who are not having it. So how can they make them stand apart, like even though they would have done certain certifications, but at times their resumes gets filtered out because of their past experience, or maybe like they aren't having any internship opportunity in the past, or maybe work ex.
So, my advice in that sense would be, one is that, you know, if they have friends and colleagues and alumni who work for organizations that they are interested in, I think they should approach their friends and colleagues and alumni directly and express their interest in becoming a part of this profession, right? So that means that you're interested, and possibly that might put your resume at least in front of some people who will look at it, and it will not automatically, for example, like we're talking about, right? It's not a technical filter. We don't believe in technical filters, but you're absolutely right. It is out there, right? So if it is out there, then if you have to circumvent that technical filter, you actually have to do it through relationship building. So then you build those appropriate relationships so that at least your resume is given the due consideration. After that, the recruitment process is, you know, fair and is the same for everyone, right? You would have to meet, let's say, a certain level of problem solving competency or cognitive ability, like Aishwarya talked about. But then, yeah, I mean, if you feel that, yeah, technical filters are kind of keeping me out, but I feel confident that I have that technical competency, right, which even certifications can prove, then I think it's again about approaching the right people.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Do we have any more questions from our attendees? Okay, so what are some technical resources for women from non-engineering backgrounds to break into data science?
So there are actually, I'm going to take this first, and I think then Aishwarya can talk about like her experience, right? Actually, if you go online, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of technical resources that are available, right? But data science is, it's not just like, what is data science for that instance, right? So Aishwarya was talking about the fact that she works in procurement and supply chain. The procurement and supply chain, the kind of data that you look at, the kind of tools and technologies that you use, that might be very, very different from, for example, if you work for consumer goods, right? So in that sense, technical resources are not important. What is important is exhibiting that you have cognitive and problem solving ability. How does that happen? You could say that I'm interested in learning open source languages because that will give me the skill set to apply problem solving ability, right? So what are the most popular languages that are out there? Python, R, learning big data, how to manipulate big data systems, for example. All of those are useful resources, not because I think that they will necessarily help you break into data science, but they will exhibit the fact that you're interested and you're learning what is the best and the greatest and the latest out there, right? So that is, I think, my perspective.
Yeah, and I think I agree with Arpita because along with just learning the technical skills, it's also important to apply this to an actual problem. It's not just about, you know, being a coder, for example. It's about a data scientist is actually a role which is an amalgamation of some tech skills and also business problem solving. So if you go onto these websites of even R and some of these Stack Overflow, for example, that's a very popular website. at least in this side of the world, with all Python code snippets, etc. They actually have quite a few resources and also real-time data which you can use along with learning that language, which actually helps you apply those technical skills to a real-world problem and how you would model the real-world problem. So I would just say that those are some really good resources.
Thank you so much. I hope Ronak's question has been answered. Do we have any more questions before we end the session? So actually I want to ask you both that how did you actually start your data science journey? Were you from a background which was totally technical, or it was a mix of everything, or what actually drove you towards this domain, like that passion, I would say, yeah.
So I'm going to go first, and I kind of fell into data science, I would say, by accident. I mean, I had a background in terms of, like, I had done financial analytics, but again, from a very theoretical kind of a construct, right? And I kind of fell into doing marketing analytics because, well, it was happening. There were a couple of friends who were doing it, etc., etc., etc. And then I started kind of enjoying the field because it helped me understand that, well, it's not just about data, it's actually about a real problem. And then once you kind of develop those skill sets, it helps you solve a real problem. And that is the reason, I think, why I've continued. And again, one major reason why I would say I switched from banking to consulting is because in consulting there's just so many different kind of problems, right? So every problem is different. So a mining example that I was giving is completely different from working for example, a telco client, or working for a bank, or working for a consumer good industry, right? So the really, really exciting thing that happens is that when you kind of go to the client, what they talk about is that the problem that they're facing, right? So it doesn't matter whether you're a data scientist or you're a general consultant. At the end of the day, he talks to you about a problem, and you have a specialized skill set that helps him solve that problem. I think that is, so I fell into it by accident, but the fact that there's just so many different kind of experiences that I got through it is what has kept me going. Aishwarya?
Yeah, I think for me, it was more of an informed decision that I took. So I started working in analytics right out of my undergraduate degree. And, I mean, I'm an engineer by education. My undergrad is in computer science. But I did not really, imagine myself sitting behind a computer all day just coding, for instance. So I wanted a job which was somewhere in between business and technology as well. So I think analytics and data science was something that really struck out. And there was an opportunity that I got right out of campus, and I just took it. So that's how I ended up working in the analytics phase. And then after my MBA, I came to Kearney, which I think was an even better place. I think it's one of the best places for analytics because we do quite a lot of work across the globe. And I got a lot of exposure with this job. So that's how my journey into analytics and data science is.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your experience. I think a lot of women out there, they would be inspired by that. Okay, so do we have one question from the attendees? If they want, we can answer that. Okay, so as you're not having any questions, so maybe I would like to thank both of you to actually give your precious time to our conference and to be valuable to every one of us. Yeah, so thank you so much from UNC Charlotte. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. It was an honor. We were very happy, and thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.